Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for December 21st. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last week, we've seen significant amounts of precipitation over the northern areas of the Great Basin, especially into the central Idaho mountains, into northeast Nevada and parts of Utah, and this precipitation over the last 7 days has been well above normal. However, we have seen some precipitation over western and southern areas, but has been much below normal over far southern Nevada and near normal in the higher elevations of parts of the Sierra and western Nevada. Today we have a significant winter storm that has already started moving into the Great Basin, and this will produce strong and gusty winds across the region, along with significant amounts of precipitation over the next couple of days, especially over the northern half of the Great Basin. Looking at the ventilation index for today, we will have very poor dispersion over the northern half of the Great Basin. Despite the higher winds across the region, we will have significant amounts of precipitation moving across the northern half of the area. Further south, we will have some breezier winds, not as strong as further north. However, the precipitation will largely remain north of southern Nevada and southern Utah, with slightly higher dispersion. If we look at the individual components, looking at the transport winds on the left, we can see the significant increase in winds with the purples and oranges across much of Nevada, indicating those higher wind speeds into western Utah and southwest Idaho. Also, mixing heights will generally remain poor to fair across the region. We move into Tuesday, and this storm now progresses eastward across the Great Basin. Later on Tuesday and Tuesday night, we'll see less precipitation over far western areas and precipitation increase further east. Again, this ventilation index will still remain relatively low in most areas, with the exception of some of the lower elevations of the Snake River Plain, western Nevada, and parts of Utah. If we look at the individual components on Tuesday, we see this significant decrease in wind flow across Nevada, as you can see by the greener colors, and the increase in winds over eastern Utah, Wyoming, and southeast Idaho. Again, mixing heights will remain relatively low in most areas and only slightly higher over the far eastern side of the Great Basin. If we look into Wednesday and the storm continues progressing eastward, we still have lingering moisture across parts of northern and eastern sections of the Great Basin, but increasing ventilation index as this storm exits. Again, the individual components show generally weaker winds on Wednesday over much of Nevada, with the exception of parts of northeast Nevada into Idaho and the eastern side of the Great Basin, which still may remain fairly breezy with higher mixing heights, indicating this higher ventilation index. Now looking at the forecast for clearing index for Utah issued by the National Weather Service for the next few days, we can see very high values for clearing index over the mountains of central Utah and northwest Utah today as winds increase ahead of the storm system. As the storm system moves further east over the next 3 days, we'll see clearing index increase from west to east across the state of Utah. This storm will also bring significant amounts of precipitation to the Great Basin, and we can see over 4 to 6 inches of possible accumulation of liquid precipitation over the Sierra Crest. And as we move further east, we'll see lesser amounts of precipitation, but still very significant, with overall liquid amounts over 1 to 3 inches across much of the northern half to 2/3 of the Great Basin, especially in the mountainous areas. Also, snow levels will generally remain much lower across Idaho and northern Utah and be a little bit higher as we move further west and south. However, we're still seeing significant amounts of snowfall in the higher elevations. The only area that may see very little, if any, precipitation would be southern Nevada. Now we'll look at the extended outlook from Thursday through the weekend. We do have another winter storm dropping into the Great Basin later this week. This one will be much colder than what we'll see early this week. However, overall forecast amounts of precipitation will be much less than what we'll see early this week. With the colder temperatures, we'll see accumulating snowfall again in the higher elevations, but also in the lower elevations as well. The ventilation index will still remain poor over the northern half of the Great Basin and somewhat improved in southern areas before this trough drops further south. By Friday, the area of low pressure drops further south, bringing precipitation to most areas of the Great Basin, at least light precipitation. This will also see continued poor ventilation index over the northern half of the Great Basin and still good dispersion over southern Nevada for one more day on Friday. And even as we move into Saturday, with this area of low pressure still near southern Nevada and southern Utah, we'll see good dispersion. However, a ridge of high pressure moves into northern and western areas of the Great Basin with significant inversions due to the cold temperatures and the snow on the ground, and this will again see very poor dispersion over these areas. By Sunday, this area of low pressure is now exiting the Great Basin with high pressure in place and inversions in most areas of the Great Basin with very poor ventilation index over generally the northern 2/3 of the area and decreasing dispersion over southern Nevada and southern Utah. Now, if we look at the overall amount of precipitation forecast from Thursday morning through Saturday morning, We're definitely looking at a lot less of overall forecast amount of precipitation than the storm we'll see early this week. However, again, with the very cold temperatures, we'll see higher snow ratios, indicating more drier and fluffier snow as opposed to the very heavy wet snow we'll see early this week. If we look out a little further towards the end of the month into the early part of 2016, we'll see below normal temperatures across the Great Basin, along with drier conditions. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.